Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. I hope your week is going well. We have made it over the hump. Uh, Wednesday was yesterday. Today's Thursday. We're racing towards the weekend, and I am looking forward to some time off. This morning, our Illy coffee is safely nestled in a Salt Lake City, Utah cup. A great way of waking up. So today we are talking about the risk management framework. I'm trying to get my screen to look. Well, it's not going to look right. That's okay. We'll talk about the risk management framework 2.0, which came out a little over a year ago now. Haven't seen a lot of people implementing it, and it doesn't do a bunch of brand new stuff. It does clarify a lot of things, though. In 1.0, there was a lot of requirements in there that were up to you to interpret, and now they're their own steps, their own tasks, and kind of gives you a better checklist, for making sure you do all those things. So I guess the first place to start is let's start with the traditional 6 steps of the RMF, right? So initially we started this thing, they were numbered 1 through 6, and we had number 1 was the categorize step, number 2 was the select step, number 3 was the implement step, number 4 was the assess step, number 5 was the authorize step, and number 6 was the monitor step. And we just numbered these 1 through 6. This was step 1, step 3, step 6, for those kind of examples. Made sense, and it was the life cycle of a system going through the risk management framework. And it was nice because it was aligned to the SDLC, or the system development lifecycle, or software development lifecycle, depending on what you're building. And it gave you gates along the way. It was nicely tied in to that SDLC. And again, it's the waterfall SDLC. So it's not agile, it's not built around agile, but it can certainly be used in agile environments, right? But it needs a little more work when we do agile, and we'll talk about that probably in a later video. But these 6 steps did great things, but a lot of times when we looked at this from the system level, it assumed that things were done at the organizational level. So Dr. Ross and the folks at NIST, they went and put together a new RMF, which left these steps alone. It got rid of the numbers, though, so we don't call them number 1 or number 3. They go by their names: categorize, or assess, or monitor. That's not a big deal in itself. We just get rid of the numbering scheme, and we call them by their name, and we abbreviate tasks in those steps. And for example, task 1.1 in the past. Now, the first tasking, the categorize step, will be C1, right? It's pretty easy. So the one thing they added was this new step in the middle. And a lot of times people call this step 0. And initially, I think even NIST called it step 0. But what it did, or it does, I should say, is it gets you ready for the RMF, right? This is done before the RMF starts, right? All those tasks that you should have been done, and it was funny that the old RMF 1.0, we'd get to a step, and there would be something in there, like in step 2, we did common control identification, which is an organizational level task, but it was kind of stuck in there with the system level stuff. So it's nice they've moved things around, and they've taken some of the implied tasks, or the tasks that were defined within other tasks, and they've created their own tasks. So there's new tasks. And when I say new, they're not totally new. They've pretty much always been there. But now they're called out by a specific task, right? For example, in step 4, when we get to assess, it was always in the guidance that you have a qualified assessor, that the assessor is independent and they're skilled in the technology they're going to be assessing. Now there's a specific task that calls that out. And what that says to me is, In the past, people were skipping that, right? And that was just an example. That happens throughout the new RMF 2.0. They've taken and created new tasks based on um, bigger statements in old tasks, right? So let's get this stuff off the screen. Skipped one there. And let's talk about what is in this new prepare step. And this morning, because we're trying to keep these cups of cyber fairly small, short, easily digestible, this morning we'll just talk about the organizational tasks within the prepare step. And then we'll have another session where we talk about the system level tasks within the prepare step, because there's requirements for both preparing your organization, which is very, very important and was often skipped, right? So in the past, we had, a system going to be developed, and there was a requirement to follow the RMF, but the organization hadn't done their steps. They hadn't done things like define common controls, which really you should have done, because one of the powerful things of the RMF is inheritance, right? So that the system owner isn't implementing 120 controls, they're implementing 20 controls because they've inherited 100 of them from the organization. There is no reason for, in most cases, I should say, there's no reason for uh, every system owner to create their own policies and procedures. That should really be done at the organizational level, right? And once it's defined a policy at the organizational level, every system owner can inherit that, right? And then take that off their list of things that they have to do. Same thing for, in most cases, organizational awareness, cyber awareness, and training, right? That should be done at the organizational level. There can always be things done at the system level, like we can reinforce that, we can make it a hybrid control, and in some cases, when it's really required, we can make that a system level control. But in most cases, we shouldn't. There should be a ton of controls we're inheriting. So when we get to that, we'll probably talk to it more. So, the first thing we do in this prepare step at the organizational level is define risk management roles. And maybe that's not the best color to be using for that. We'll probably fix that in future videos, but that's probably not the best color. But this is risk management roles, right? As an organization, we need to define who the roles, what the roles are, and what kind of requirements are defined for those roles, and what are the responsibilities for those roles, right? And we can start with the RMF itself, NIST, Special Publication 837, and we can read their requirements. We can read what is the requirement for a chief security officer or a senior information security officer? What are those requirements? And we can build our own definitions based on that. If you're in the government, you may not have great flexibility in creating your own definitions, but the RMF is not only for government organizations and agencies. The RMF can be used easily in any corporate environment, in any private sector environment, to give you a nice framework to start with, especially for those organizations that are, struggling to get a program built. It's already there. It's already free. There's a ton of people, I shouldn't say a ton. There's a lot of people that are trained in the RMF, right? Are on Cyber-Recon. There's a track out there for the RMF now, and it's going to be rewritten. It'll be rewritten with the 2.0 stuff. You can go out and go through it. Grab the free download. Obviously, if you want to buy a book, I can recommend a great one on Amazon. Just getting ready for its second revision. But go out there, get the free material, start looking through it. It makes great sense. It's tied to the SDLC. And it's got a huge set of controls that are in a partner document, the control catalog. So we can build our program starting with these roles and responsibilities. Get them down in writing. Define who the chief security officer is. Define, if you have one, who the chief information security officer is. Define who the ISO is, or the information system security officer. What are those roles, and what are they required to do? Is there training requirements for those different roles? Those things should all be documented, and those people should be assigned in writing, right? So you should have assignments for all your ISOs. They should be assigned, and it should be defined what they're responsible for. So that's the first thing we should do as an organization. What are the roles we're going to have in Acme Corp, right? And what are the requirements for them, and what are the responsibilities, right? The next thing at the organizational level we need to do is we need to build a risk management strategy, and that's going to be defining, what our organization's kind of afraid of. What are our risks? What are the threats out there? What vulnerabilities do we have? What's our operating environment look like? What's our risk tolerance level? What's our risk appetite? How much risk are we willing to take on? Are we, risk averse? We're going to stay away from risk. We're going to avoid risky things, or are we risk seeking? Are we looking for things that are maybe a little more risky and they're going to result in a greater reward, right? So we have to see where we're at. What's the strategy at the organizational level? Because that sets the tone for every system, right? So if you're a risk-seeking organization, right, you're going out there, maybe you're trying to capture new market share, maybe you're building new things, maybe you're just the tone of the organization is seeking risk, then system owners can be a little more flexible in their ability to build a system with that risk tolerance level, with that risk appetite level. But if you're risk averse and system owners have that same, kind of risk seeking appetite, there's a mismatch. So when their systems go forward to get approved, there's going to be conflict, right? So we want this tone set at the top. We want to know, what is the requirement? What's our risk management strategy? And how are we going to take care of risk? What are our threats? What are we worried about, right? An organizational risk assessment. We should have this done, right? The organization should go out and assess where it's at in this risk spectrum, right? It's going to define, do we have good programs in place? And normally these organizational level risk assessments will be beyond just cyber. So we're going to look at physical, we'll look at administrative security, we'll look at different things, and then we'll look at the threat environment: physical, political, cyber. What's the threat environment look like? What are the threat actors we're worried about? Are we worried about activists? Maybe we have an organization that, maybe we have a company that makes fur coats, right? So there's probably a lot of hacktivists that will come after us. So we have to worry about those threat actors and what they can do to us. If we're a government organization that is maybe in the intelligence space, we probably have nation states that are the threat actors that will come after us, among other things, right? So the organization has to do this risk assessment and see where they're at on the playing field, right? And that's going to help develop the program for the systems, because later on the systems are going to have to do the same thing. They'll have to do a system level of risk assessment, and that should fit into the view of the organization. We also, in RMF 2.0, we have things like this. This is a optional step, right, or an optional task, I should say. This is where we can build tailored baselines or cybersecurity framework profiles. And this is just taking that normal baseline, right? So NIST is going to have, a moderate level baseline, and we can go in and say, yeah, we're going to have a baseline called Scooby-Doo. I don't know, and that's going to be maybe based on the moderate level baseline. But we're going to add in these 15 controls because we think those are important. And then any system that meets that requirement will get that Scooby-Doo baseline approved, right? So this is just saying, same thing we've always had. Organizations can build their own baselines, right? If you're in an organization that has required baseline set, like maybe you're in the government and you have something like you have to use low, moderate, or high baselines, you can still go in and use that moderate baseline and build it for maybe, systems deployed overseas. And you add 10 controls to the baseline. You're not doing anything to hurt that moderate baseline. You're just creating a kind of a moderate plus baseline, right? When we go to remove controls, we're going to always want to do that through either a overlay process or a manual tailoring process. But we can build as many baselines as we want at the organization. The organization can approve those, and that'll help the system owner in getting their system done faster. They're not going to have to think so much about what baseline to use. I can pull that right off the shelf and say, here's the controls that I know I've got to implement. And that's really what a baseline is. It helps the system owner understand the baseline controls that are going to be required when they go to get assessed, right? And if I go for my authorization, I've got to have certain controls in place. And that's what the baseline does. So we can tailor these, and it's optional because, it's up to the organization whether they want to build them or not, right? We also have a movement of a control, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. This was in step 2, was step 2, task 1, common control identification. That's been moved up to the prepare step under the organization. Obviously, this needs to be done before we start building systems, right? Common controls are there to help the system owner not have to implement every control in their baseline, right? This makes it more efficient. It makes it less expensive, and obviously faster. We can get systems built faster if we're not implementing every single control at the system level. If there's controls at the organization level, at tier 1 and at tier 2, at the common control provider levels, put those there, make them robust, make them inheritable, and if they're good, then we can just inherit them at the system level. And then system owners don't have to do that. And there's a ton of controls that are prime for being built into the inheritance model. We should have the majority of the controls being done at either tier 1 or tier 2. The system level should really be the minority of the controls. It should be those technical controls that are specific to that system. And that's really, that's important. That makes things faster and better, and smoother and all that stuff, right? Another optional task is this impact level prioritization. Just like building baselines, your organization can go in and say, we're going to build new impact levels. And for the normal government, impact levels are low, moderate, and high. The DoD and the intelligence communities have a kind of a three-type categorization. I don't know what to call it. It's based on the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Each of those gets its own rating, right? This happens in the rest of the government too, but they take that one step further and combine it down into the highest rating, right? What's called the higher watermark. They'll have something in the DoD or the intelligence community. It will be something like low, moderate, right? So it'll give a impact rating for confidentiality, impact rating for availability, and an impact rating for integrity. Sorry, I'm losing my mind early in the morning. Not enough coffee, probably. So either way you do it, you can also add to those in your organization, right? So if you're in an organization that is not DoD or not intelligence community, and you're using low, moderate, and high, you can go in there and say, my moderate systems, I want to define them a little better so that when I go to prioritize my systems, maybe I have the majority of my systems are moderate level systems, and there's 100 of them, and I just can't say 100 things are all moderate. I need to be able to say, these are the most critical moderate, these are the middle moderate, and these are the low moderate, right? So I can go in and say, in NIST, they say something like moderate, low moderate, and high moderate. I think that's muddies the water with the way the intelligence community and the DoD do things. I would say, like level 1 moderate, level 2 moderate, level 3 moderate. Whatever way you do that naming convention, that's up to you. That's up to the organization if you want to do this. But it gives you the ability to say, of all my moderate control, or of all my moderate level systems, moderate impact systems, these are the most important moderate, these are the middle important moderate, and these are the low important moderate. So that when I go to prioritize things, when I go to spend my money, I can say, okay, I'm going to spend more on these high moderate systems or level 1 moderate systems, right? So maybe I've only got 5 high impact systems. We get through those, we get them implemented correctly. Now we're into the 100 moderate level systems. How are we going to allocate our resources, right? And that's where we want to use this. So we don't have to use this. We just can. It's available to us as an organization to build these other impact level prioritizations, right? And then finally, we have to build a continuous monitoring strategy at the organizational level, right? Or information security continuous monitoring strategy, depending on where you grow up, right? ISCM, or information security continuous monitoring, um, has to be set at the organization level. That way we know the requirements we can set at the system level. And for example, we say, this is going to say how often, how frequently we monitor a control. So we may say policies and procedures, they're not as perishable as other controls. So maybe we're going to say policies get reviewed every 3 years and procedures get reviewed every year. We can say that in our continuous monitoring strategy. The danger we don't want to do is have the system owners doing this without having an organizational strategy set, right? If we look at something like training and training and awareness, definitely Thursday without a lot of coffee. Training awareness should be set at the organizational level. It should be an inherited control, a common control. So when we set our ISCM for training and awareness, we may say that every organizational individual has to go through information security awareness and training annually, right? And now we've made a standard for the entire organization. If we don't do this at the organizational level, System A may say, I want everybody trained annually. System B may say, I want everybody trained every 3 years. System C may say, I want everybody trained every 6 months. So we have disparity amongst our systems, where if we develop this strategy at the organizational level, then that can flow down. That can be inherited in lower systems. The strategy can be implemented at lower systems. They'll know as they build the system, this is our ISCM. And again, like other things, the system owner is going to have to build a system level ISCM for the controls they implement on that system. So those are the new organizational tasks. We'll flesh them out. This was kind of a high level overview. It wasn't a deep dive into each of these tasks. It didn't define everything that was required in each of these tasks. We'll do that in the RMF playlist. We'll build this out in the RMF playlist, and I guess certainly when that's ready, we'll add a. I guess I should use the right mirrored here. We'll add a tile or something you can click above, and you can go check out that playlist. So hopefully you're having a good morning. Hopefully things are going well. Hope you're having a good Thursday, ready for the weekend. And please join us again tomorrow for tomorrow morning's Friday version of Cup of Cyber. As always, please like the channel, subscribe, hit that bell. That way you'll know when these things are coming out. And do know that beyond Cup of Cyber, we've got other programs that are being produced now and are going out either Monday or Thursday. Our IT training track will start today, starting the IT Fundamentals Plus training. That'll be out a little bit later today, where Emily and I talk about how we number, how we number in computers, binary, hexadecimal, and regular old, the numbering schemes, right? And binary, decimal, and hexadecimal are the things we talk about. Look forward to that. Hopefully see you tomorrow morning. Hopefully see some folks showing up early in the morning. Join us, and I will see you tomorrow. Enjoy your day.